Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the program in the Shades of the Qur'an. For those who have just joined with us, our today's topic for discussion is Khatm al-Qur'an. And to discuss this topic, we have with us a prominent scholar, the founding principal of Al-Quran Institute London, Hafiz Shafiq al-Rahman al-Madani. If you do have any questions related to the topic or even in general, please feel free to dial the telephone number appearing at the bottom of your TV screen. Sheikh, we were discussing about the minimum days of khatam, and you were talking about there are 3 days and 7 days. And you did mention about if it's less than 3 days, it is considered to be makruh. If you can a little bit elaborate on that.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
The Quran is to be read and is to be understood and then lived by. We have been saying this.
Since the first episode, yes.
Reading of the Quran has certain etiquettes because it is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we cannot read it like any other book without paying attention to its correctness, correct reading, and thoughtful and reflective reading, and all this and all the rest. So keeping in view these things, these 3 things, particularly reading the Quran with respect, with honor, with veneration, with reflection, and producing each and every letter from its respective makhraj or articulation point, and with the necessary qualities and all this rest. In other words, tajweed. It is an opinion, a view based on experience and observation that doing a khatm of the whole of the Quran, the entire Quran, in less than 3 days would mean or most usually mean that the Quran is read without giving regards to its correctness, correct reading and tajweed and reflection and so on and so forth. This is the reason why some scholars say that complete the reading of the Quran in less than 3 days is makruh, is undesirable, because usually as a normal practice, one will not be in doing it in less than 3 days. One will not be able to do the reading of the Quran as it should be.
But we do have instances when we know some Sahabis did read the whole Quran just in one night.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say. These are exceptional cases. Exceptional cases. If someone is so extraordinary, in reading, extraordinary speed and skill to read the Quran in less than 3 days, maintaining the conditions of the conditions of good reading and meaningful reading and correct reading, then it's fine. It's only makruh means undesirable, not haram.
I see.
Makruh means undesirable. Something is, it can be done in a better way. This one way of doing it, yes, it's fine, we accept it, but it's better that we do it in different way.
Okay.
This is what, preferable. So makruh doesn't mean that it is a makruh. In fiqh terms, makruh is 2 types. Makruh has 2 types. One is called makruh tanzihi, and the other is called makruh tahrimi. One makruh is that which is haram.
I see. Close to haram.
You're close to haram or haram.
I see.
And another is close to halal or halal. It's just a degree of
difference. Okay.
Desirability and undesirability. So in other words, if someone can read it in 3 days time, there's no harm in it.
I see. Is there any particular intention does one need to make when doing the Khatm al-Quran that they have to say or utter verbally?
No, there is nothing to utter verbally. Intention is always attaining sawab and reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it.
That's it.
And that is, intention is an act of the mind, is not an act of lips. So when someone starts reading the Quran and he or she has in mind that through that reading they would want to attain and acquire or get sawab or reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's it. Quran shouldn't be read for any other purpose other than getting reward and sawab from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
But then we do notice, especially during the month of Ramadan, or if there is any special occasion, say for instance if someone is not fluent enough to read the whole Quran, say for instance in a month time, we do notice a tendency that people delegate section or portion of the Quran between the family members. Does that fall under the Khatm al-Quran for that particular individual?
No,
No.
unfortunately not. Khatm al-Quran acts of ibadah. Khatm al-Quran is an act of ibadah, as I have said, is a worship, is an ibadah bandigi, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ibadah, acts of worship, cannot be delegated to other people.
Okay.
There are certain instances.
It's just you do see these instances, like for example, lots of our brothers and sisters, especially during the month of Ramadan, they have that intention to make that khatam, but they think they won't be able to make it due to the lack of tajweed or due to the lack of tartil. So they think if they can delegate portion or section of it between the family members,
well, there is no point in it, because if you are doing it to for getting sawab for yourself, what's the point of getting it done by somebody else?
So that means
if that somebody else will get the sawab himself or herself, not for yourself.
I see. So that means Khatm al-Quran has to be done only by the individual. They have to read.
Yes, that's right. That's right. If that's sensible, isn't it?
It does.
Because you want reward for yourself.
Correct.
If somebody else does it, then somebody else will get
somebody
reward.
else helps him to accomplish the khatam.
Not really. Not really. Otherwise, why shouldn't be, for example, sadqa khairat or nafal salah and sadqa, and why should it all be done by somebody else and then say, well, I give you the reward? No.
That's true.
No.
Is there any special timing one should adhere to when it comes to khatam?
Anytime,
During the day or night?
anytime. There is no sort of particular timings to be adhered to or to maintain. It's unlike salah. Salah, as we know, there are three times in which salah is forbidden.
That's true.
But reading the Quran, no.
At any point of time.
At any point of time. However, it is good that if we can sort of maintain a time between, let's say, Maghrib and Isha, because these are practices of certain Salaf, or pious ancestors, Salaf Salihin, between Maghrib and Isha, and after
Maghrib
Fajr,
Salah?
after Maghrib Salah, between Maghrib and Isha,
Between
Maghrib and Isha, in the time between Maghrib and Isha, or after Fajr. These are two of the timings which are preferred by in practice.
What about tahajjud time?
Yes, the Quran is the best way of reading the Quran is inside Salah.
Inside Salah.
Now, when we say inside Salah, obviously fard is prescribed.
Correct.
So if someone knows the Quran, the more one knows of the Quran by heart, then the more advantageous it is, the more advantage one would get in reading the Quran, from different places inside Salah. Unlike the most customary practice of, knowing by heart the last 10 small surahs or, brief surahs. So the more one knows by heart, the better. So apart from salah, apart from the prescribed, the fard salah, nafal salah, particularly tahajjud, if one can read the Quran in Tahajjud Salah, then obviously it is well and good. It is well and good.
In the Salah.
Yeah.
What about when someone is fasting, apart from Ramadan, when we fast normal Nawafil fasting, or for instance, say the Shawwal fasting, which I'll bring it in the end of the discussion,
Yeah.
while fasting and obviously then completing the whole Quran, is there any more thawab or reward for that?
Well, there is no particular connection between reading the Quran and fasting now.
No.
Reading the Quran on its own is an act of worship, and doing nafil fasting also on its own is an act of ibadah. But there is no particular connection between Quran reading and fasting, in the sense that if I do both together, I will get more reward. Particularly no. But there are certain narrations available, particularly Imam Suyuti in his book Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran, and Imam Zarkashi in his book Al-Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran. They mentioned certain narrations from certain tabi'een, and tabi'een are the generation following the Sahabi generation, that Khatm al-Quran can be coincided with the fasting. In other words, when someone is finishing the whole round of the Quran, the Khatm, during that time someone can do fast, can keep fasting, and
just before the end of the Khatm.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And so Khatm and fasting,
separate,
and so can go together.
Together.
But as I said, there is no particular connection in terms of increased reward
I see.
between fasting and Khatm now.
And after the Khatam, we do notice every Quran has got dua after Surah Nas.
Yeah.
Either it could be a smaller one or a whole page dua.
Yeah.
Is it a must that after we complete Surah Nas that we have to read the dua?
Yeah.
Or do we go straight back to Surah Fatiha and Baqarah until first ruku'?
Well, the question is dua. There are few questions. One is dua, the position of dua. The merit and the fazila of dua. And the other is dua following the Khatm al-Quran. And the third is whether it is a must or not.
I see.
So each of all these questions needs to be separately answered.
I'll come back to that, because I've been told we've got a caller waiting for us on the line, inshallah. Let's see who the caller is. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Yes, your question, please. Thank you very much for phoning in.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead. Can you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
Thank
we can
you
hear you.
for taking my
We can
call,
hear you.
first of all.
Yes, go ahead, please.
The Huzur's discussion raised many questions,
Yes, please.
particularly in relation to Khatm al-Quran. Ever since we have been young kids, our elders and our Guzurg and our Islamic teachers, we've learned about doing Khatam during the month of Ramadan. There's many questions that I would like to ask, but obviously time is not going to permit to have a one-to-one discussion with this Huzur.
Okay, please.
Therefore, I will not be able to. There's a particular issue that he raised. He said, in the month of Ramadan, there's no relationship, or maybe I misunderstood, there is no relationship between reciting the Quran and...
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay.
If you can put the
Let
TV
me
volume
just put
down.
my
we can
volume
hear
down.
it.
I think it's disturbing me. Let me put my volume down. So he said about not having, the Quran hasn't got a relationship between month of Ramadan and recitation of Quran during the month. Now, what Huzur has forgotten, the Quran itself was revealed in the month of Ramadan.
No, before that, we just want to get the clarification. Is your question that the Sheikh mentioned that there's no relationship between Quran and the month of Ramadan?
No, he didn't say that. He said he don't get, there's no extra neki or swab for reciting Quran in the month of Ramadan. Did I get that wrong?
Okay, you stay online. We'll get that clarified now.
Thank
Sheikh,
you.
if you can clarify that.
Jazakallah, brother, questioner, for raising this question. If you have understood me saying that there is no special connection between Quran and the month of Ramadan and extra rewards, then that is exactly the opposite of what I have said. Probably you misunderstood it. What I have said is that the Quran is to be read all the time during all the time in the year, in a year, or during the lifetime of a Muslim person. But then I said Ramadan has a particular connection because Ramadan, in the month of Ramadan, Quran has been revealed, and therefore, because of this particular connection, people do maintain this connection and do take care in reading the Quran or Khatm al-Quran during the month of Ramadan, which is correct, which is right. If you have understood otherwise, then this is completely, what I intended, opposite of what I intended to. So yes, in other words, the month of Ramadan has particular connection.
As you have mentioned earlier in our previous episode, that the reward gets multiplied in the blessed month of Ramadan. Brother, are you there?
One more question. I hope you don't mind me asking that as well.
Please.
I don't want to take too much of your time.
Okay, please go ahead with the second question.
I think Hudu mentioned about getting someone else to do khatam, because in Bangladesh, where we originate from, there is a khatam called Khatm Safina.
Okay.
Now, they gather a lot of people to do the khatam in one night and then do the dua. So can I have some opinion of the Huzur in relation to that, please?
Okay, that's a good question.
I will go and I'll listen to it.
Okay, stay online. We'll see if we have any supplementary question to that, Sheikh.
Sure, I don't want to take too much of your time. I'm sure other people are waiting.
It's very, very important question you have raised. It's a very important question. I think, inshallah, Sheikh will be more than happy to answer this question.
Jazakallah. I think, yes, that's also a question in view of what we have, the custom that we have in our India, Pakistan subcontinent.
That's why I did mention the issue of collectively or individually the khatam.
I was going to separate the two questions.
I see. Yes.
The question I answered was whether I will get the reward of somebody else's reading.
Okay.
That's one question. Somebody else is doing this thing for me and I will get the reward. Shall I get the reward or not? If somebody else is eating for me, will it be considered my eating?
Yeah, I see.
Somebody else is drinking and then say, well, I am drinking for you. Will that be enough?
Okay. What about that caller?
That's true. There are two questions, two separate questions. So I answered the first question that ibadah, Quran as an act of ibadah, Quran reading as an act of ibadah, as an act of worship, like salah, like sadaqah, etc. It cannot be delegated to someone. You do it and I will get the reward. No. Okay? I hope I'm getting things very clear here. Yeah. Secondly, this practice of doing Khatmul Quran for the purpose of what we call Isal Sawab.
Okay, Isal Sawab.
Isal Sawab. That is the brother mentioned this, and this is what I'm sure he meant. When we do Khatmul Quran to get a reward ourselves, and then gifting out that reward to someone else.
When you say someone else, is it living or?
No, the dead.
Someone who's passed away. I had that question.
This is called Isal Sawab. Isal Sawab. Isal means to get it there, to get it across, in Arabic, to communicate, to give it to someone else. I did the reading of the Quran, I got the reward. It is mine, it is in my account. But then if I want to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, this is my reward, I wanted to gift it to someone else, so and so of my dead relatives. That's called Isar Sawab. Okay? Now, the practice in India, Pakistan subcontinent in particular, and some other parts, not in the Gulf or in
it's
in
mostly commonly found in the subcontinental region.
Yeah, the subcontinental region. Getting a, I mean, if I do it myself for my parents, for example, I made a khatm of the Qur'an, and then I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, can you, I want to give this to my parents, and that is fine. That is fine. Even though there are certain ulama and certain different opinions, but the practice of getting some people, some maulanas, and delegating the task to them, and also in exchange for certain payments, that's a matter,
Yeah, it's break time, inshallah. We'll be there. We'll be back again. But inshallah, do stay with us. We'll see you, inshallah, shortly.
We'll answer the
Assalamu
questions.
alaikum.
Yeah.
We'll continue this discussion. Inshallah, assalamu alaikum.